Now, if there's one thing we know about Detroiters, it's that we're proud of the city we call home. From the old memories to the new one, there are hundreds, even thousands of things that make the Motor City special. And we have two Windsor natives who have decided to wrap it all together into a new book called 5,000 Ways You Know You're From Detroit. And I said Windsor. Why would Windsor natives be writing a book about Detroit?
Well, you know what? We were called South Detroit until they could figure out what to call Windsor. We're a mile away. We love Detroit. Why not do a book on it? We've done other books on local history. It was time.
And you know, I was so excited to get to the book. I did not introduce you. We are joined by Chris Edwards and Elaine Edwards. Thank you so much for joining us. But I was like, yeah. Windsor in Detroit, but you said it was called South Detroit.
Yes, originally, because Windsor and Detroit formed basically at the same time, you know.
And so they were just deciding, okay, well, what are we going to be? Well, I guess Detroit was named first.
Yes, yeah, because it's French.
It's all French.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the book. I picked this book up. It is a really hefty book here.
Mm-hmm.
So 5,000 Ways You Know You're From Detroit. Why did you guys decide to do this book?
Well, we did a book on Windsor, which was called 500 Ways You Know You're From Windsor, and it was very successful because it looked at the baby boomer years, growing up during and after World War II, and what was it like. And then we thought, well, let's do it on Detroit, but Detroit's 10 times bigger, so got 5,000 ways you know you're from Detroit.
All right, well, what are some of the fun ways people know they're from Detroit?
Okay, you can, starting off with Boblo, went to Boblo. They shopped downtown at Hudson's, Kresge's, met underneath the Kern Clock. They drank Verner's when they weren't feeling good, especially.
Right.
What else, Chris?
Coney dogs, American or Lafayette, what's your choice?
Okay.
You know how to pronounce certain road names like Shaner?
Yes.
You know how to pronounce
Shaner, Gratiot.
Sure. And if you're on Outer Drive, you know you might have to break out your map or your GPS because Outer Drive is the...
Yes, exactly. It's like you still don't know which way you're facing on Outer Drive.
Right.
So this book, you said it starts from the 1930s to the 1980s. Who is it targeting?
Baby boomers, people who grew up post-World War II, especially till about 1965 or so, who grew up in the Detroit area and remember all the great things that make Detroit so special, unique, and wonderful.
Detroit's unique because after the war, we had the introduction of all the great cars from the 50s. I mean, you just had a piece on the Mustang, which was the pony car.
Right, yeah.
And that's 10 million cars. So that was an invention of Ford. They came up with the idea of the pony car, and they weren't sure it was going to catch on. So just think of all the great cars that came out of Detroit at that time. The Cadillac, which I love, and the Lincoln, and the T-Bird, and
the Edsel.
Yeah, and that's right. And just flipping through the book, one of the things I love is that this is not a book that focuses on one thing. Right. It really is culture. So no matter what your interests are, if you're interested in movies, there's a part of Detroit Goes Hollywood. If you're interested in sports, you have sports. So no matter what your interests are, it's reflected in this book.
Yeah, it's reflected in how we grew up, and being very fortunate to grow up in this tremendous city with all these great things that happened during that time, including the great sports teams as we talked about, but the theaters. There's 150 theaters that are mentioned in the book, and it just goes on and on.
And there's some, you know, tough things too. We included some periods of time in Detroit's past that maybe weren't exactly something to, you know, celebrate, but you have to acknowledge. You
should recognize.
You know, there, of course. So we tried to give it a level of sincerity.
All right.
That way.
Well, if you're interested in the book, you can find it. Everything's on Amazon. You guys are on Amazon?
Yes.
All right. So you can find the book, and it's called 5,000 Ways You Know You're From Detroit. It's a 472-page book, and it looks like a really fascinating coffee table book. Elaine, thank you so much for joining us.
Keenan.
Chris,
Keenan,
really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And I'm going to flip through this book just to find out a little more about Detroit, because you don't know all 5,000, even if you're from Detroit.
Oh.
There's going to be something
there
you
might
don't
even
know.
be more.
Might even be more.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. All right, we'll be right back.